Hello, how's everybody doing? It's Phil Thatch, and once again, I'm doing a live stream on a Wednesday evening. I think this might be the 6th week in a row, although one of the weeks it was on a Tuesday. And I think this is going to be the next to the last one for a while. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to be done with live streams after next week's, but with the time change, there's some more daylight, so I could actually go out and do some photography while Heather's in class. Plus, I think her class excuse me, I think her class might be pretty close to being done. Let me get a little of this Pog juice. Same stuff I was drinking last night or last week. Passion fruit, orange juice, and guava nectar. And this is in a, let's see how this works. This is in a Knoxville or Nashville region, Tennessee region Sports Car Club of America second place trophy. When I was doing autocross, I never got first place when I raced in Nashville. But I got second place quite a few times, so they give you a glass. If you get first place, you get a beer mug. So if you look at the thumbnail, it looks like this week's stream is going to be completely about the Nikon Z8. And that's kind of true, but not completely true. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Hello, Stephen Stewart. How you doing? Thanks for joining. Wow, you're here early, and actually I'm here late. So that worked out good, a good combination. I guess I should recommend that people hit the old thumbs up button so more people will join us. And I am going to talk about the Z8 some, but not nothing but the Z8. And if you look at the thumbnail, that's not a Z8, obviously, in my hand. That's my Z6. And speaking of that, all of my other live streams, or at least all the recent ones, I've used my Z6 as the camera. Let me switch back. I've used the Z6 as the camera because I really like it for live stream situations. But today, for the very first time, I'm using my Canon R6 Mark II and the 24-70 2.8 RF as the streaming camera, because I wanted to have this Z6 as a prop, because there's a couple of things about it that I really want to show during the live stream, because I love the form factor of this camera. But like I say, I want to wait a few minutes before I get into the meat of the discussion about about my thoughts on the R8 rumors, because I don't want to have to repeat myself, because I want to wait till there's some folks in here. Let's see what Steven is saying. Let's hope the Nikon Z8 is going to happen with all the specs. Oh, I've got a wire going right across the screen in front of my chat window, so that has got to get fixed. There we go. I'm hoping for the Z9 autofocus. Not that I'm unhappy with the Z6 II, but I heard the Z9 is even better, so I can't imagine how good that will be. Yeah, it's the Z9 autofocus system is supposed to be really good, although I've heard people say that there's a couple of other brands that are still a little bit better, but I held my friend Ray Soldano's Z9 in my hand for just a second, and I didn't really know what I was doing, honestly. I wasn't able to shoot with it long enough to even make a judgment. The boxes that it puts on the screen, I'm not used to. And I think that was off-putting for me. But I've seen lots of really good photographers do really good work with their Z9, so I'm sure it's fantastic. I am sure it's fantastic. Hey, there's Mike Mitchum, who I texted and said, hey, I'm going live about a half an hour ago. But I didn't. Actually, I said I'll go live in the next 10 or 20 minutes. But Heather, you know, I'm always doing these live streams because Heather's in a class in the other room, and she was doing her presentation. And I kept thinking, you know, we've got a ton of bandwidth. We got fiber optic internet. But what if I flipped on my live stream and killed her presentation? Because usually she's just in there, you know, listening to a class and occasionally making a comment to the professor. But tonight she was doing her presentation. And so that's the reason I'm a little bit late. So sorry about the lateness, and thanks for joining and all that stuff. There is Ray Maiden. Hello, Ray. Thanks for joining. Hope you're doing well. So Well, the camera just turned off, and I think I may have a setting set wrong on this camera. No, it wasn't a bandwidth problem. The camera powered off, and so I'm just going to have to. I don't have my timer set right. I may have to fix that right now in the middle of the stream. That's got to be what it is. Bear with me. Technical difficulty. Well, that's embarrassing. Anybody home? So, oh, looks like I have to press display one more time. Hey, you want to see how the Canon eye detect autofocus works? Put my hand up there. There we go. Still here. Cool. Sorry about that. Let me turn this. Let me turn this one more time. Okay, that should have that turned off. Yes. Well, who wants to take a guess what I did to screw up just then? This, like I said, I'd switched from using my my Nikon camera as my streaming camera to using my Canon camera. And who wants to take a guess what setting I had messed up? Let's see. Ray says, first time I could make it live, missed last week as I was at Orlando Wetlands. That's awesome. I was in heaven. It's fantastic. I even got to see and take shots of a pair of sandhill cranes and their 5-day-old colts. How awesome! When we were there, there were no sandhill cranes. Wait a minute, I'm hearing someone at the door. Is that you?
I was coming to say hi.
Okay, I'm gonna turn this fan on. I have had disaster after disaster.
Oh no!
Yeah. Well, first, I was late starting because somebody was in the middle of giving their presentation, and I didn't want to mess up the bandwidth, so I didn't. There's Heather. And then I realized you were done with your presentation. And I thought you were going to be done with your class any second, and then you weren't. So I said, "Gosh, it's going to be time for Casey. My daughter's coming later this evening. It's going to be time for her to get here. I need to start this thing." So I started it. And just a few minutes in, the camera shut off.
Oh no!
So I was asking everybody, guess what setting I had wrong and why my camera suddenly disappeared. And while you guys are thinking about that, I'm going to read comments. Let's see. Ray says, first time I could make it live was at Orlando Wetlands and saw sandhill cranes and colts. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
When we were there, there were no sandhill cranes at all.
Well, they were here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Thanks again for your videos. Thank you, Ray. After watching your wetlands videos, I asked the wife if we could take a day away from Disney and go. Oh. She liked it so much we went again the next day. That's awesome. You know, that's exactly what we do. We go down there with my daughter and her fiance, and they would get totally bored in a bird sanctuary all day long. So, but because my daughter's grown now, she can take care of herself, and they go to downtown Disney and hang out all day while we go to Orlando Wetlands, and only about 15 minutes further down the road is Merritt Island and the Black Point Wildlife Drive. So that's worth it as well. Oh, okay. Bye. Heather says bye.
Bye. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Peter Richards, Eveningsfield, greetings from the UK. Finally made it to the live stream this week. And thank you for showing up. I hope the technical difficulties weren't off-putting. And let's see, there's Bill. Hello, Bill. Good to see you. Stephen, dinner bell is ringing. We'll have to watch the stream later. No problem. Sorry I was late. Howdy, Angelo. Good to see you. Nobody's guessed what made my camera shut off. If you're doing a live stream, you have to tell your camera, do not turn off after a certain amount of time. Because, you know, cameras are set up to default to be on for a while, and if nothing happens after 5 or 10 minutes, they turn off to save your battery, so they don't just sit there and burn the battery out in your bag if you accidentally leave the camera on. And I did not change that setting when I decided to switch from live streaming with my Nikon Z6 to live streaming with my Canon R6 Mark II. So that is what the problem was, and I apologize about it. Now, this whole stream, the thing I'm supposed to be talking about is the Nikon Z8, which has been rumored for a long time, and apparently it's coming pretty soon. So we're going to talk about that real quick. And let's start. We're going to go to Nikon Rumors, which is a fantastic website. I highly recommend it, as well as Canon Rumors. I think the word on the street is that Sony Rumors is not as accurate as these other two. But this is Nikon Rumors, and this is an article that was on Nikon Rumors all the way back in September of 2022. So, what, 6 months ago? And in this rumor, they said the Nikon Z8 is rumored to be announced/released in 2023. The time frame I received from multiple sources is March, which is now 2023. And they said it's likely to come in one of two ways. The first one is a Nikon Z9-like camera without the built-in grip, but with the same sensor as a Z9, which I think that is really something to think about. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to it having the same sensor as a Z9, but in a smaller body. And of course, no battery grip would make it smaller. The other version, which at the time, the Nikon Rumors guy thought was more feasible, says a mirrorless version of the D850, meaning a slower, in other words, not as many frames per second, high-resolution camera. Now, the Z9 is the same resolution as a D850, and they were saying that this Z8 might be even more than that. One possible scenario, 60 plus megapixels and a $34.99 price tag. Now that would be a fantastic landscape photography camera, one that my friend Adrian Alford from Australia might be interested in. This does make sense to me. If true, Nikon is basically trying to repeat the huge success they had with the D850, and I believe this might actually work. Well, fast forward a little bit, because that was 6 months ago, remember? Let's see, I think there's a whole Z8 section. Look at the targeted ads I get. B&H, bird feeders. Can you tell that all my targeted ads have something to do with photography, be it wildlife photography with these? I've been thinking about getting a heated bird bath for the back porch. Also right here is planters that I thought about putting bird attracting plants in. Anyway, that's the kind of advertising I get. Nikon Z8 size comparison. This is pretty cool. There's the Z9. This is the D850, which they're saying now, the rumor is it's going to be similar in size to the D850. And in the middle here is where they think, what size they think the Z8 is going to be. And this next row has the Z9, what they think the Z8 is going to be. It's interesting to me that these pictures of the Z8, which are just mock-ups, they don't have an 8. It just says Z. There's no 8. And then beside it is a Z7. Now, some people like a camera with a battery grip. Some people like a camera to be really big. I'm not one of those people. I don't like a battery grip. From Mike Mitchum, I bought an XT3, a Fuji XT3, and he threw in a battery grip because he's a nice man. And I just didn't like it. It was uncomfortable in my hands. I like the extra batteries, but I just didn't like the form factor of it. And then my friend Bill Fouth let me borrow his Canon R3. You may remember I did a quick wildlife video, and then I shot a soccer match all in one day, excuse me, with my friend's borrowed R3. And the camera was awesome, but I just didn't like that big old bulky body. So the Z8 without a built-in battery grip would be great for me. But also at the same time, speaking of size, this is my Nikon D800. This is the most expensive camera I've ever bought. It's the only camera body I've bought that was over $3,000, and it's 36 megapixels, which at the time was a lot of megapixels. And I kind of learned a lot when I had this camera. I learned that maybe I don't need all that many megapixels, and I also learned that I don't like a giant body. And even though this camera doesn't have a built-in battery grip, and I never put a battery grip on it, it's just so big. And one of the things I really love about this camera, this is the Nikon Z6, which is in the exact same form factor as a Nikon Z7, is it's not so doggone big. Now, it's not like a Z50, which I've got one around here somewhere. I should have brought it out. It's too small. But to me, this camera is just right. I really don't mind at all my pinky going under it, as you can see here. Now, there's other people that hate that, and the larger form factor of a D800 would be probably better for them. Now, I don't have small hands. That's not why I like a smaller camera body. It's just, I don't know, it's more, I can't really explain it. Now, something else I'm noticing in these pictures is it looks like the Z8 is going to have one of these connectors, which is, oh, come on. Maybe there we go. One of these. This is this big, ancient looking, old technology looking connector where you can put a cable release, and it looks like it's going to have that. Now that's something, and look, this is, they wear out. The thing in front, the rubber piece, wears out. It's fallen completely off of mine. And the one on my D500 hasn't fallen off, but it never stays closed. On these cameras, on the Z6, the remote cable release is a different connector, and it plugs in It plugs in right here, and I've used the cable release a bunch on this camera, but because it's this big cover, I have no problems with it falling off. So I'm not a fan of that, but opinions vary. Some people prefer this kind of connector for their remote cable release. So to each his own. And that's the same thing with the bigger body, you know. But I just like small. And really what I was hoping for with the Z8, although honestly I'm not going to buy it. I've got too much money invested in Canon equipment right now to buy, because I think they're saying it's going to be nearly $4,000. So, but I could, because I still have all my stuff. This is my 70 to 200 2.8. I sold a lot of my Nikon gear, but I kept my favorites. I kept my 70 to 200 2.8. I kept my 14 to 24 2.8. Fantastic, amazing bulbous lens. I kept my 70 to 200 2.8. So I'm ready to rock and roll. If, you know, of course I'll have to adapt all these, but if Nikon comes up with a body that I just can't live without, I'm ready to rock and roll, because I got all of those. Plus I've got my birding lens. I've got the 200 to 500 5.6. So if they do come out with a body that I just can't live without, I'm ready. But that body will probably be, for me, a Z90. I like APS-C cameras. And really, I'll probably let this lens go at that point, because when I bought my Trinity lenses for Canon, I learned that really I don't need 2.8 for my ultra wide. And I don't like this bulbous element. This lens is great for live music, where you might need an ultra wide in a low light situation, and it's great for astrophotography. But for landscape photography, you have to buy a giant adapter and get huge filters to go on it, and that's why I prefer these days for my ultra wide to be a smaller f4. Like I bought that Canon 14 to 35 f4. It's a 77 millimeter filter. Perfect. But I still like 2.8 on my 24 to 70 because I might use that for sports and portraits. And I still like 2.8 on my 70 to 200 because I might use that for sports and portraits. But let's see. Let's continue on down the road. You know what? I'm going to pause my Z8 stuff and see what you guys are saying. I'm excited to see the larger body. See, there's Chris saying he's excited for the body that's bigger. And I would prefer it, but it doesn't matter because I'm not buying it. I would prefer it to be this size. So, see, it's different strokes for different folks. You need an ad block extension. I haven't seen ads in decades. Yeah, my friend Ray's always telling me that too, Chris. But I don't know. I just see them. So there they are. Always loved having a grip, but having owned the R7 now for a while, I've just got used to not having one, rather like not having an extra weight. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Peter. That's exactly me too. But even the extra size, I find, because I'm trying to fit more and more power into a small bag, because it's, you know, sometimes you find yourself in a crowd, and if you got a giant bag on your back, then you're bumping into people. So small body, smallest lenses you can get away with that still have lots of power is kind of what I'm in. Let's see. Angelo Garcia says, Zzz. I don't know if he's fallen asleep. I don't know if Angelo fell asleep while I was having technical difficulties, or if he's fallen asleep from all this Nikon talk. Let's see. Chris says, I'd rather have a larger body without needing to add the removable grip. See, I'd rather have a small body and never put a grip on it. But another thing that I like about it is they're saying it's going to have the what's this battery called? ENEL. Of course, I don't have the good one in here. I keep my the gray one, which has the C on the end. I keep it on the charger. And usually I would set up the live stream with this older battery and then switch to the current battery right when I went live. That way my camera doesn't go off in the middle of the stream like happened today. All right, let's see what else we got on the Z8. there they're showing a picture of a Z7 by a D850 to show the size difference, much like you can see right here. I've lost my good article that I was going to talk to y'all about. This picture is interesting. See this right here where I have my pointer, that's that connector I was talking about. Improved EVF, improved autofocus, same sensor as the Z9. So in the old days, back in September, there was a possibility of it being a 60 megapixel slow camera or a possibility of it having the same sensor as the Z9. And it looks like it's probably going to end up being the same sensor as the Z9, which in some ways is completely awesome. But it almost seems like they may be kicking the Z9 in the shin if that thing has all the power of the Z9. It's all about the Z9 to me is all about the stacked sensor. No shutter in that camera because the sensor's so fast that you don't need one. A lot of times, like in the R6 that I'm shooting with right now, I use the electronic shutter most of the time. But if I'm shooting sports and there's like a soccer player kicking that soccer ball, I'm going to have it on mechanical, because otherwise, even though this is a fast, as far as non-stacked sensors go, it's pretty fast. It's still the ball's still going to be shaped like an egg. Because of the rolling shutter distortion, but the Z9 sensor is fast enough to not have that. Let me see if I can find. Have you guys seen on Dwayne Patton's videos this chart right here? This is a blog by this guy named Dennis A. Mook, The Wandering Lensman, and he's got this chart. And it's the first time I ever saw this chart right here was on Dwayne Patton's videos. But now when I Googled it, I found this same chart on this guy's, and he said that he found these on some other website. So let me give credit to all of them. But this is so cool. The Canon R has an 80 millisecond readout speed. Super slow. Shorter is better. Faster is better. So that sensor is going to have a ton of rolling shutter. A7R4, 62.5. Nikon Z7 II, 62.5. Canon R10, 40. Getting a little faster, but still slow. XT5, 31.3. This is interesting to me. The Fuji XT5 has a 31.3 millisecond time, and the older XT4 has a 19. Of course, the XT5 has a lot more resolution, I think. My beloved R7 is pretty slow at 31.3. It definitely has lots of rolling shutter distortion. The Canon R6, 19.7. And down here, the Canon R5, 15.5, which it was the fastest readout speed of any non-stacked sensor until the R6 Mark II came out at only 14 milliseconds. But all these red ones, these are all stacked sensors. The Fuji X-H2S, which is an APS-C camera, it's got a stacked sensor, the slowest of them at 9.7. The Olympus OM1 is a micro four thirds camera, 7.8 milliseconds. The Sony A9 Mark II is 6.2 milliseconds. The Canon R3 is 5.5, really, really fast. Now I can tell you from personal experience, I've shot that camera at a soccer and there's no rolling shutter at all. Somebody can be making a corner kick right beside you, and you can get that shot right as the player's foot hits the ball, and there's no, or as the ball's taken off, and there's no rolling shutter distortion. So 5.5 milliseconds is fast enough. I'm not sure about these others. I know 14 milliseconds isn't fast enough, and I use mechanical. But moving on, the Sony A1 is 4.2 milliseconds. And the reason I brought this graph up is because I wanted to show you the Nikon Z9. It has the fastest sensor you can buy at 4 milliseconds. And right down here below it, a mechanical shutter is 3 milliseconds. So it's almost as fast as switching to mechanical shutter. And this is how they were able to get away with not putting a mechanical shutter at all in the Nikon Z9. So if the, look at all those ads. I should get an ad blocker. So if they do really put the Z9 sensor in the Z8, that's going to be ridiculous, because you know the camera is going to be less expensive, and it's really going to be something. Now, honestly, you know, there's been no official announcement. Honestly, I'm kind of skeptical, and I still think, even though the rumors now are leaning towards the same sensor as the Z9, I still think it might go the 60 megapixel version and not be a stacked sensor and be more of a landscape photography camera. But it's rumors, it's not announced, nobody knows. Now, let me catch up on some comments. I would rather have a that is me falling asleep with Z-Talk. Get it? Yeah, I get it. I get it. You know, the funny thing about this channel is when the Nikon Z6 first came out, I was an early adopter to mirrorless cameras, and I bought a Z6 pretty much right when they came out, and I started making videos about the Z6, and the first several thousand subscribers to my channel came because I was using Nikon gear. And then Canon came out with this amazing animal eye detect autofocus, and I bought an R6, not right when they came out, but you know, within the first several months I bought an R6. And man, the Nikon people were so mad at me, and a lot of them left, but a lot of them stayed, and I really appreciate that. And now, you know, sometimes people who have been watching the channel just since Canon, every once in a while I talk Nikon, because I still love Nikon, although Canon's definitely my #1 right now. But I can understand, Angelo, it putting you to sleep. But I'm bilingual. I'm bilingual. I speak Canon and Nikon, and I enjoy both of their products. Let's see. How do you do that, switching between Nikon and Canon? I can barely switch back and forth between R6 and R7. The hardest thing is the zoom. Ray, the hardest thing is the zoom, because Nikon zooms, if you want to get closer, you turn it this way, and Canon, if you want to get closer, you turn it this way. So that's the hardest thing. Getting used to where the buttons are on the camera is not that hard. Just because I've done it so much, but the muscle memory of when you're in a hurry, you know, because I'll get my camera settings all set up before I start shooting. But if I'm at a sporting event and somebody's, this happened when I was shooting the video that comes out Saturday, because I was using the D500 and I was using this 24-70. And a lot of times if somebody's doing a fast break situation and they're coming towards the basket, you need to zoom this way. You need to get a wider shot as they're coming up to the basket, and I would turn the lens the wrong way and miss the shot. So to me, that's the hardest part about using both brands. But you know, if you use third-party lenses, some of those, like even a lens designed for Nikon, it might do its zooming like a Canon, and vice versa. So you'll get used to it. Let's see, what's next? Do you have a problem shooting in mechanical on R7 with shutter shock? Yes, I absolutely do. But in the situations where I need to switch to the mechanical shutter on the R7, I'm shooting at such a fast shutter speed that it's not a problem. you know, the R7 is not great in high ISO situations, and the 100 to 500 is 7.1 aperture on the 500 millimeter end. So both of those things make you want to use a really slow shutter speed. So if you're using mechanical shutter while you're taking pictures of birds, that's when you'll see slow shutter speed pictures of birds. That's when you'll have the shutter shock. But the only time I switch my R7 to mechanical is if I'm shooting sports. And if I'm shooting sports, I'm probably at least at 1/800th of a second, and usually hopefully faster if I have enough light. And at those speeds, I don't see it that much. I've heard people say that there's still shutter shock, non-sharpness, excuse me, at fast shutter speeds, but I haven't experienced it myself. Maybe my old eyes can't see the tiny bit of out of focusness or motion blur caused by the shutter shock, but I just can't see it. So yes, the mechanical shutter does cause motion blur, but the only time I use the mechanical shutter, I'm shooting fast enough to where it's not a problem. Shutterstock versus rolling shutter, choose one. Yeah, well, choose one unless you have a stacked sensor. You know, unless you have a stacked sensor. If you have a stacked sensor like these cameras in the red here, no shutter shock and no rolling shutter. So that's kind of cool. And my hope is that one day, but I'm really honestly skeptical about this, about a stacked sensor being in the Z8, but it might be. Hopefully for Z8 buyers, I hope there is. But my hope is that one day, like maybe on the R6 Mark III, or maybe on the R7 Mark II, or 3 maybe they'll develop stack sensors that aren't quite so expensive. And because I don't, you know, I'm pretty hard on cameras, and I don't like to spend, you know, 2,500 is about my top. Really, I was saying, okay, 2,000 is the most I'm going to spend on a camera body. After what happened to me, I had this D800, which was like $3,500. And, you know, I take my cameras the places I go, and I was at Epcot, and I had this camera in a little over-the-shoulder bag with this lens on it. Both are heavy. And I got off of a ride, and I let the camera bag drop down beside me like I had done 150 times during that vacation. And somehow the clamp on the strap on that bag had gotten turned around just such a way that it came undone. And that bag spun to the ground with my $3,500 camera in it. And when it hit, it busted it right here and right here, and this back piece was hanging open. So there I am at Disney World with a busted camera. That's why I call this the D800 Super Glue Edition, because I brought it home and super glued it back together. You know, to fix it would have been nearly the price of the camera. And it still works. I've used it, you know, I've used it for years after that. The menu button right here, when you push it, it's slow to come back out, but it's never stuck on me. And anyway, so at that point I said, you know what, and you guys may recall my R7 that fell in the creek when I fell down. I slipped on a rock and hit my tripod as I fell down. The top of I knocked my Z6 off of a table when I was doing some live music photography. And anyway, I'm hard on cameras, so I like to not spend too awful much. So this was the last kind of, well, this wasn't actually the flagship, but it was right next door to the flagship. It was as close to the flagship as the Okay, we're definitely going back to the Nikon for streaming, although I did like the picture output of this camera. The Nikon was definitely less problematic, and a battery would last an entire live stream. See, there's another reason to have multiple kinds of cameras. You learn that some work better for some things and some work better for other things. I am back. That is right. What a problematic live stream this has been. Holy crap. Let's see what people said while I was gone. Heather said, hit the thumbs up button, and then I died. Whoops again. Whoops-a-daisy. We lost you. Yes, we did. Would love a Canon APS-C with a stack sensor. Me too. I hit the like pill. Thank you so much. Hey, there's Jay. What's going on? Thanks for joining us. Got audio. Yeah, audio came back first, briefly. We should eventually get a stack sensor on a flash. You know what else? You can't power this camera through the USB-C port while the camera's on. And you can't do that with this camera either, but the battery lasts the whole time. But apparently the Nikon Z6 II, you can power through the USB-C port while the camera's on, and then these problems would never happen. But I used to live stream from time to time with my little Nikon ZFC, the retro camera, and it would power through the USB-C port. But this fancy R6 Mark II, which came out after it, won't do that. So there's something to add, Canon. Let us power the camera through the USB-C port. That would be handy. Let's see. Stephen is back from dinner, and I went offline again, Stephen. This has been the most problematic live stream ever. And we've talked all sorts of stuff, mostly about sensor speeds and sensor sizes. So it's just been crazy. Oh, I have a tip. Always put your camera in the bag when traveling, or strap it down with the seatbelt. If you just lay it on the seat, the first time you hit your brakes hard, bam, goes the camera. You know, and I used to be the biggest stickler on that. And lately I've gotten lazy with securing my camera while I'm rolling. And one day I'm going to pay the price for it. But yeah, Heather made fun of me one time because I would strap the camera down so much while it was in the car, but then I'd put it in the trunk and not strap it down at all. But I think, you know, if it's in the bag, it's okay. But sometimes I'll have the bag unzipped so I can, while I'm riding around, if I see a bird or something, I can quickly get the camera out. And I bet that's going to bite me one day. Should just go back to Nikon for good, Chris says. You never know. You never know. Stranger things have happened. Angelo says, welcome back. Thank you. So, I'm still having trouble finding all my little articles I wanted to show you. But the main thing is, I'm excited about that sensor. And I'm not excited about the larger size, because I want things to fit in my bag in a small way. But that I'm probably different than most people, especially most people who are in the market for a camera of that price range. You know, they want, I would think most people who are expending huge money on a camera want that big, almost phallic largeness, you know. But I'm kind of over that. I like a small camera that I can pack away easy, but not tiny. I wouldn't mind if the R7 was a tiny bit bigger, but not huge. And I definitely don't, you know, they don't even offer a battery grip for the R7, and I don't miss it at all. It's got a great battery, although I'm struggling with Canon batteries tonight. You know, and I don't think the camera actually shut off just then. I don't know what happened. Definitely got some bugs to work through on live streaming with this Canon. We'll be back with the Z6 next week. I would say pretty much almost for sure. Let's see. Steven says, I agree, smaller size. Hope that is not true. Yeah, me too. Nick, I just picked up my first camera, Nikon Z50. I've always loved taking photos, but just use my phone. I'm loving the creativity that's coming back to me now that I have the Z50. That's awesome, Nick. And I love that Z50. It was because I a lot of times, especially for sports and bird photography, I like an APS-C camera better than a full frame camera. And there was a while when the Z50 was my favorite camera, even though I had an R6 and a D500 and a D800. The Z50 was my favorite for quite some time. Let's see. Peter says, I will take that tip and up the shutter speed if need to shoot in mechanical. Cheers. Thank you. Yeah, that's the way to go. Z50 is a good first camera, Heather says. Rob Kramer says, is it your UTC playing our Hokies on Friday? Women's basketball? Yes, that is us, the number 16 seed. And it's the UTC girls team that's in the video that Heather and I are photographing in the video that comes out Saturday morning at 7:30 Eastern. That is definitely our girls for sure. And, of course, I don't look for them to do well against the number 1 seed. It's an honor just for them to get to the tournament because that's a smaller college, but they're cool. And watch their point guard. I think she's 5'4", and I think she's only a sophomore. But that girl plays as hard as anybody I've ever seen. So anyway, go Mocs. Cool. All right, well, the most problematic live stream in the history of live streams. Oh, Addie, thank you, Heather. Heather, if you need any fact, Heather will have it. But anyway, I think I'm going to call it a stream, and I've enjoyed hanging out with y'all. Sorry about all the technical difficulties, and maybe they'll announce the Z8 here in. Gosh, who knows? Could be as early as. I think there's a bunch of Nikon announcements coming out on March 25th or 23rd or something. Or maybe it'll be months from now before they announce it, or maybe it never comes out. Who knows? We never know about these things, but thanks for joining. Z50 2-lens kit for $450. Wow, that is awesome. That's I love both of those lenses, the 16-50 and the 50-250. I love both of those lenses. Couldn't pass the deal up. Wanted to start collecting Z lenses. Awesome. I wish I had bought more Z lenses. I've always, because, I just had such a huge investment in these F-mount lenses, the Holy Trinity. I mean, that's like $6,000 sitting in front of me in just those 3 lenses. And that's $6,000 in 2013, 2014 money. So replacing them was a hard pill to swallow. I heard today the R1 may be here in 1 year. Yeah, I think they're putting the R1 and the R5 Mark II off for a while. And somebody was saying that the R1 and the R5 Mark II may come out at the same time, but that doesn't seem all that smart to me. But they may come out at the same time because they might come out right before the Olympics or something. I don't know. But, the way it is for me, the R7 is relatively new. The R6 Mark II is almost brand new. So unless Nikon says, hey, we're going to release a APS-C, a flagship small sensor camera, then I'm probably not going to buy a camera body all the way through 2023. Which I'm not sure when the last year where I didn't buy a camera body, at least one, was. But it may be, the next one may be this year. Sure enough. All right. Thanks, everybody. I enjoyed it, and I apologize again about the technical difficulties. Go Mocs. See y'all next week.